Rachel never imagined she would be the woman standing by a tiny white casket. She had dreamed of lullabies, not laments. Of rocking chairs and midnight feedings, not eulogies and cemetery visits. She had waited years for this baby. Years of praying. Waiting, hoping, miscarrying, starting again. 3 times she had felt the flutters, only for them to fade into silence and empty hospital rooms. But this pregnancy had been different. Stronger, steadier, her body responded differently. The baby moved constantly. At every appointment, the heartbeat was strong, a rhythm she came to love more than any song. She and her husband Mark had begun to believe this was the one. They named him Elias. She stitched his name on a soft blue blanket and placed it over the crib. They painted the nursery pale yellow and built a mobile from tiny wooden stars. At night, she would lie awake, hand over her belly, whispering prayers and promises to a child she hadn't yet seen, but already loved with all her being. She dreamed of his laugh. She didn't know what it would sound like, but she imagined it bright, contagious, full of light. She longed for that first sound, that sacred giggle only mothers truly recognize. And then, without warning, everything stopped. 38 weeks and 2 days into her pregnancy, she noticed Elias wasn't moving. At first, she told herself he was just resting. Babies slow down near the end. It's normal. She drank orange juice, laid on her side, counted, waited, stillness. At the hospital, the nurse searched the screen. The doctor came in quietly. The silence grew heavier. They said the words like an apology. "I'm so sorry." There's no heartbeat. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't speak. She felt her body fall inward, like a house collapsing from the inside. Mark sobbed into his hands. Nurses wept. Rachel just stared at the ceiling, wondering how heaven could be so cruel. They induced labor the next morning. She delivered Elias in silence. He was perfect. Full head of hair, tiny lips, a dimple in his chin. They placed him in her arms. She memorized every detail, knowing she had only minutes. She kissed his forehead and whispered his name over and over again like a prayer, like a goodbye. She begged for one thing. Let me hear him laugh, just once. But no sound came. Only the ache. They buried him on a gray Wednesday morning. Rain soaked the cemetery grounds. She wore the dress she had planned to wear to his baby dedication. As the casket lowered, she held the blue blanket to her chest and felt like the sky was falling. For days, Rachel couldn't speak. She stayed in the nursery, sitting in a rocking chair, her arms empty. She rocked back and forth, humming lullabies. To no one. Mark tried to hold her, tried to pray, tried to breathe, but grief stood between them like a wall of glass. They barely spoke. At night, she would press the blanket to her face and sob until her voice broke. She didn't eat, didn't answer texts, didn't open the door. Her world shrank to 4 walls, a crib, and silence. She stopped praying, stopped believing, stopped everything. One night, 2 weeks after the funeral, Rachel walked into the kitchen and stood in the dim light. She stared at a glass mixing bowl on the counter. She picked it up and clenched it in both hands. She held it tight until it shattered. Blood spilled from her fingers, but she didn't notice. Mark rushed in, saw the glass, the blood, her blank stare. She fell to her knees and screamed, "Dot, why would you let me carry him this far? Just to bury him? Why would you let me feel his kicks, plan his future, name him, love him, only to take him before he ever took a breath? What kind of God lets a mother rock an empty chair?" She collapsed onto the floor and wept so violently her chest heaved. Mark knelt beside her, and for the first time since they left the hospital, they held each other. He wept too. He whispered, "I miss him too. I miss him every second." That night, for the first time, they prayed together, not with perfect words, just pain. They asked God to show them something, anything, to prove Elias was more than a body in the ground, to prove that heaven is real and their child is there. 2 nights later, Rachel woke up at 2:17 a.m. No sound, but something stirred. She sat up. Slowly, the room was still. She closed her eyes and she heard it. A laugh, soft, light, airy. A baby's laugh. Not from outside, not from a monitor, but from somewhere else. Deeper, fuller. It was unmistakable. Her eyes flooded. She clutched the blanket and trembled. Then came a whisper, so gentle, so sure. He's okay, Mama. She didn't know if it was God, didn't know if she was dreaming, but her soul felt flooded with peace. Like warm light had entered her chest. She laid back down, tears soaking the pillow, and slept. For the first time in weeks, she truly slept. In the morning, she told Mark. He stared at her, stunned. I heard it too, he said. I dreamed I was in a meadow and Elias was there. He was laughing, chasing butterflies, and he looked back at me and smiled. Rachel sobbed again. Not with pain, this time with something close to joy. They began to heal. Slowly. Rachel started journaling again. She wrote letters to Elias, kept them in a box under the crib. She began attending a support group for grieving mothers. At first, she said nothing, just listened. Then one day she spoke and told the story of the laugh. Some women nodded, some wept. One woman came up after and said, "You're the first person who's made me believe I'll see my baby again." Rachel went home that night and stared at the blanket folded on their bed. She picked it up, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "One day I'll rock you again." Years passed. She and Mark never had another child, but they became spiritual parents to many. They fostered. They mentored. They led a grief support group, and every time someone asked about Elias, Rachel smiled. He lived long enough to hear me say I loved him, and one day I'll hear him laugh again. Sometimes on quiet nights, the breeze would lift the curtains, and for a moment, just a moment, she'd hear it, that sound. Laughter light as wind, from a place beyond time, from a place where pain ends and joy begins, and she knew. He was waiting, not lost, not gone, just waiting.